What is up? And welcome to Jadonna Live. I am so happy to have you here. This is a bi-weekly show all about self-love, sustainability, and community. And the point is to have more questions than answers, to kind of have a dialogue, if you will, if you guys are responding, about things going on with regards to those topics in life and how it kind of intersects with you. And I'm really into the mantra, come as you are, like just show up, feel like you can be here authentically, but also live like you're trying. Lean into those areas of growth that you're interested in and do those at the same time. So thanks for being here. I am Jadonna, and if you've been here before and you enjoy the podcast, please go ahead on Spotify or Apple and rate it 5 stars. And if you've never been here before, warm welcome. Just happy to have you. And yeah, I don't have, a ton of time for this intro today. I left my kid downstairs with markers and gel crayons and regular crayons, and my husband's sleeping. And I thought, what's the worst that could happen? I've already gotten tons of gel crayon on my $2,000 couch, pen on my walls, pen on my my rug that's right next to me because of negligent parenting. So, what's more? It's fine. He's 3. He can handle himself. So yeah, this will be maybe somewhat brief, but also maybe not. If I look like I've been crying under my right eye, maybe my left, it's because I was watching Khloe Kardashian's interview with Teresa, the medium, who I love, and it was so good. I love mediums who are specifically connected to like light and God, and like just like who don't channel darkness and who don't embody or communicate through darkness. I 100% believe in all of it. And so love hearing about it. I've never been visited by a person. This is really taking a spiritual turn. Anyway, we'll do a podcast on that at one point, but totally believe in all that. And that was a very good podcast episode by Khloe. So check it out. I wouldn't say I'm a fan of the Kardashians, but I don't mind them. I feel like people have very intense views about them. But yeah, really excited to have you all listen to the interview today with my former colleague, Elissa. She's so sweet. She's sharp. She's hella like determined and driven. And I really, really, really respect her. So this will be a fun convo. I've mentioned my past work and social impact before, but I feel like I've never gotten to have anyone on who really understands it, and she really understands it because, yeah, we were in it together. So, in terms of affirmations today, I don't know that I'm going to have the affirmation segment maybe for the rest of this month, just because I've mentioned it here on the pod, prepping for a kiddo. So just really making sure I get these episodes in, and that's really kind of the focus, not making them as elaborate as they can be. Just, getting them done. And I'm really, really bummed because I had an interview set up with the owner of a company I love, and she said yes in December. I was like so excited, so shocked, but she's really busy. Her company is booming right now and has been the past like few years. And so I was worried that this would happen, but it did, and she canceled and did not reschedule. So will not have her on, at least for now, but maybe hopefully in the future. So that's a bummer because that was one of the shows I was gonna have come out when I was on maternity leave, but it's okay. Really excited for today, like I said, and I woke up feeling so good, feeling so hopeful, feeling so energized and excited and happy. And I really, really, really am sending you those vibes right now. I completely believe in like energy sending, not just through prayer, not just through an affirmation, but also essentially, yeah, prayer and affirmation, but with your being. So I'm sending that to you for those who may really need it today. And yeah, thanks again for listening. And let's move on over to the What Are You Into Lately segment. All right, so welcome back to the What Are You Into Lately segment. In this segment, I chat with folks about what they're into, and today I've got a great guest and former colleague here to discuss a fun program she helped kick off and execute for the state of California. So, Dr. Elissa Lee was appointed as Director and Senior Advisor of Community Engagement for California Volunteers Office of the Governor, leads the Neighbor to Neighbor initiative, which builds social connection in California neighborhoods to improve community health and resilience. Dr. Lee has worked on several physical and mental health initiatives across sectors, running awareness and action health campaigns for Lady Gaga's Born This Way Foundation and Clinton Foundation, designing chronic care, CalAIM implementation, and homeless prevention programs for Scan Health Plan. And in her research and in writing an Oxford University Press book and several articles on health disparities in BIPOC, LGBTQ+, immigrant, and disabled communities. So she has been getting to work, if that is not clearly apparent to you listeners. Dr. Lee received her doctorate in occupational therapy at USC and her bachelor's in psychology at UC Berkeley. So what I love about your resume, even from when you first started, with me at work, I love how versatile it is, but also I love how overlapping it is. So it's just fun. I can't wait to have you on and to chat. And so welcome to the podcast, Elissa. Super happy to have you here.
Yeah, so great to be here. It's been such a long time since we got to chat, and I'm
I
such a huge fan
know.
of yours. So
Oh, so sweet.
so happy to be here.
Thanks again for your time. So if you guys weren't aware from the intro, Alyssa's in California and you're in the Bay Area.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, we're on different time zones and we're making it work and it's just cute. And so I really wanted to have Elissa on because for those of you who are familiar with the pod, earlier this year I had a couple of episodes on building stronger relationships specifically within your neighborhoods. I was just telling Elissa, during our prep time, I have been in my neighborhood now for 2 years and that's odd for me. I grew up my parents have lived in their neighborhood 30 years at this point. So I was just one of those people who grew up living where I've lived forever and just knew everyone and blah, blah, blah. And that's been very different here. And so yeah, building relationships with my neighbors has been fairly difficult, ironically. Even though at the beginning of the year I was like, yeah, let's all do this. It's blah, blah, blah. That's going to be a part of my New Year's resolution. And so I wanted to get Elissa back on, as a practitioner in this field to kind of just hear the work she's been doing and the pursuit of building neighbor to neighbor programs in California. And for those of you who are interested in building more solid relationships with your neighbors, listen to this, take some notes from this. There's hope if you're struggling with it. And there may also be other organizations locally you can connect with that maybe you don't even realize exist. So let's get started. So Elissa, do you mind just kind of speaking to the program you run exactly and what community needs led you to launch it?
Yeah, so I have the privilege of leading the Neighbor Neighbor initiative for the Governor's Office of Service and Community Engagement for the last couple years. Um, One of the things that really drew me to this position was the opportunity to do something to create a statewide program that could improve people's health. As you mentioned, I started my career as an occupational therapist, and one of the things I saw a lot of was that people's burdens of disease could be alleviated by social connection and social supports. I often joke that I kept going upstream to find the source of the issue. So I worked in health administration, health journalism, foundations until I found myself at the Governor's Office of Service and Community Engagement. So I think from a personal standpoint, like one of the things I got to do right before joining geo servicing, oh my God, sorry, long alphabet soup, go serve, is a journalism fellowship where I focused on LGBTQ and BIPOC seniors and caregiving. And probably in that time, I got to interview over 100 plus seniors and was just struck by how many people would take me to their front door and start pointing out their neighbors. Like that one helped us during the last ER visit. That one helped us during the pandemic, got us groceries, you know. That one we just wave hi to. We don't know them yet. And so I think I got to grow up, I think, similar to you, like neighbors helping each other, like all the neighborhood children would play together. We would fight to go to the pool in one neighbor's house. And so have just really kind of seen this connection between people's health and well-being and how connected they are to their community and how great it is that we have community all around us, even though sometimes we may have to try to find it. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So thank you for that. And specifically for the program you're doing right now, how long has that been going on? And can you kind of speak to maybe some specifics of it and how you've seen it evolve over time?
Yeah. So we've had a couple different programs running, and you may actually be able to speak to this better, but Governor Newsom had first launched Neighbor to Neighbor in 2020 to ask people to check in on their neighbors um, during the lockdown, making sure people get their groceries and things they needed. And so from there, I think we were able to reach about 10 million Californians, and all these stories poured in about people helping their neighbors get groceries, like sing birthday songs through the window. And the legislature had granted this one time funding to figure out what comes next. How do we help people check in with their neighbors, not just in the gray skies and the pandemic and the emergencies, but also in blue skies? So we have a couple different programs running now. One is the Meet Six Neighbors program, which shows, I guess, research has shown that knowing about six of your neighbors maximizes sense of health and well-being. We like to think of it as a fun, smart goal and kind of permission structure to get people to go and connect with their neighbors. We have also sent out a few different grants to about 8 local governments across California, spanning rural, suburban, and urban communities. And through that, we've really been able to see an array of different kind of programming across the state, which has been really incredible.
So, l- so many people create and build programs, and they're not always necessarily like what a community needs. And so I'm just really curious how, with these grants you're funding to local governments, how are you guys really making sure that the funding going toward these programs is addressing what the community really needs?
That's a really great question and something I ask of myself constantly. I think one of the things, so I got to join in May 2023, about I think the same month the former Surgeon General Dr. Vivek Murthy's Epidemic of Loneliness report came out. And from there, we got to embark on a 6-month listening and learning tour where we talked to community members and local governments and researchers and community-based organizations. And that was really, I think what we really wanted to learn was how a state can support something that's meant to be so local and so grassroots. Like we've seen CBOs do a really great job with that, neighborhood associations, local governments. And so from that, we were able to kind of analyze a couple of different learnings. I think 2 ways that state could help to support something so local. One is around cultural norms. Can we help to set a cultural norm across the state that every Californian is a neighbor and we should get to know our neighbors? We heard a lot about the epidemic of loneliness. We've heard a lot about COVID-19 feeling like that accelerated this sense of isolation. If I had a nickel every time someone said the words out of practice to me, I could fund my program over again. So could we create some guides and prompts for people to help? With that, California is one of the most diverse states. And so I did also hear some hesitations around, is there language barriers or different cultural expectations of what a neighbor is and might do? And so how do we kind of help to bridge some of those gaps? And polarization is something we're seeing nationally and globally. I think one of one of the most salient examples in my mind is the Kern River Valley. Some of the community members there were sharing that during the election year in 2024, they could feel the tension because 4 years prior, more than half, I guess, had voted Republican, and the other half had voted independent or not voted or Democrat. And so, kind of, how do you help to bridge some of those gaps between, maybe some things that are fun, like block parties and art, to bring people back together, or some more serious topics like fire, both in the preparedness and also during resiliency and response and recovery during the Burrell fire last year. So one bucket is cultural norms. The other is social infrastructure. We heard also through a series of surveys that if people don't know their neighbors, they're not super inclined to volunteer to be a neighborhood leader. And so, and they're also not super inclined to knock on doors or answer the door. It's a little intimidating. And so it became a little bit about third spaces. Like, how do we help to foster third spaces like parks and libraries and schools, local businesses, many of them who are already doing this work, and to be places for convening for people to feel safe and connect together. Technology, which we are all on, maybe a little too often. How do we kind of use it as a tool so that people can stop scrolling and start strolling the streets and getting to know their neighbors a little bit? And then also really hearing that the isolation is at all levels. It's not just the individual neighbor that feels isolated. The neighborhood organizer often feels like they're doing it alone, the local elected leader, the state agency. And so how do we kind of, as the state, create these opportunities? Like I think a few months ago, we had all the libraries together to brainstorm ways where libraries can connect in the state of California and make libraries a more socially connected place. And so, yeah, I think we did a lot of this work and then continue to, and maybe to some degree, survey and connect with people. When the grant was first distributed, each local government had to show that they were working with their community organizations, they had community buy-in, do a series of surveys asking people what they wanted to see in their community and what they would come out to. And they could draw from previous surveys as well, because we know there's survey fatigue in many communities, especially communities we want to reach. And so so from that survey analysis, they had to make a plan around like how they would pivot and how they would continue to connect community and do events that people really wanted to see. Sorry, very long-winded answer.
I love No, that was perfect. I love all the research that goes into the background. I remember hearing about like that epidemic of loneliness paper like every day when I worked there. But it was really profound because it's like something you can logically understand and like kind of assume is occurring, but when you see the research, you're like, oh, okay, this really is happening and this really needs to be addressed like a illness would be addressed. And so I like that it was taken that seriously. Um and so for folks who, are kind of on that pragmatic side of things and they're like, okay, what okay, you've been doing this, you're funding this, great. What are you seeing work? You mentioned some activities in your description of like, there's some door knocking, some block parties, some just checking in on neighbors in a really casual way. Do you mind speaking a little bit more to some of the specific activities you've really seen succeed throughout your time, and maybe some that haven't been as successful, at least in your opinion?
Yeah, I think it really depends on the community, and sometimes it takes a while to figure out what is it that the community needs. I think we've seen, um, you know, also, I think the other really interesting thing too is if you, for example, in a neighborhood, have a neighborhood social versus a neighborhood cleanup, you might see different people come out to both. And so it really, I think, has no one size fits all. There's a variety of things that people have gotten to do. I can share some of my favorite things I've seen. And I can also share some of the little things that people can just start with if we're feeling intimidated. Yeah, so we do have a little bit of a toolkit. If you go to like meet6neighbors.com, the idea is that there are maybe 4 small ways that you could help start connecting with your neighbors. One is, just saying hi and starting a conversation. We talked with Dr. Gillian Sandstrom, who is a researcher at the University of Sussex, whose research is exclusively on talking to strangers. And she had done this wonderful intervention study of a scavenger hunt where you had to find 20 people, I think, within a month, like someone with a hat on, someone from a different generation. And I think what they had found in that study is that the perception of talking to strangers is quite intimidating. But as you start to do it more and more, maybe by five or six, you start to feel a lot more comfortable. Generally, the experiences have been positive for people. And so that also led us to think, maybe a little bit of accountability or permission structure of like, hey, the importance of knowing your neighbors would be helpful. Number two is joining or organizing a gathering. Oftentimes, libraries and schools and local businesses will have little community activities that you can look up on your local websites. And the organizing thing we've thought a lot about as well, because I think when you think neighborhoods, you think block parties and, shutting down the street and getting the permits and, having a big party, which is amazing. And kudos to people who can do it. Um, I think a lot of our neighborhood grants have also found that it can be equally helpful to find existing spaces like the local coffee shop or the local park, maybe an indoor in Indiana in winter, but somewhere where people can come together and there's a little bit more of a casual hosting than a full-on activity. So organizing can be something as big as a block party, and sometimes that's wonderful for, once a year. But it can also be a neighborhood check-in at a boba shop or at the local library, which many of them have free conference rooms. Number three is volunteering to help. And so if you're seeing neighbors who need help with something, or if you just want to offer, I think that actually goes a long way. We've seen actually in 2025, the Pew Research Study Center released a study where people find that, or we found that Americans are very willing to help their neighbors, like, check in on plants, get mail, but they don't actually feel that people will help them in return. And so I think that there's a big activation gap of people who are willing to help and ready to help. And yeah, there just needs to be a little bit of a marker there.
That's so true. Like I feel like that's so true in so many different ways, like people feeling like, "Oh yeah, I'm happy to support you," but don't feel comfortable asking for help. D or don't feel comfortable like, will listen to you all day, but don't feel comfortable sharing information, especially, like, cross-culturally, cross-racially, a lot of factors that can play into that, so that's interesting.
Yeah.
What you just said made me really curious about what folks in rural areas are doing because they live so far away from each other. It's like you're not going to be shoveling their snow or meeting at a coffee shop likely. So I know it's a little off script here, but I'm just curious, like, how
Yeah.
you've seen this work in the rural settings.
Yeah. It has been really interesting to see. I've a city girl myself and have grown up in many cities across the states and Taiwan. And so, yeah, it's looked a lot different. I think what we've seen in Paradise and in Kern has been primarily a focus on disaster preparedness and resiliency and recovery. And so one of my favorite actually activities that Paradise has put together are these Good Fire weekends where people come together, sometimes at a park, Noble Park in Paradise, and sometimes on indigenous land, and they learn about the power of beneficial fire. And so there's a prescribed burn that happens. There's activities around biochar and other kind of fire practices. There's some indigenous cultural education. And then I think the really innovative piece that Blake Ellis at Chico State Enterprises, the Fire Safe Council folks have really put together is this community fire therapy that's led by forest therapy guides, certified forest therapy guides at Chico State. But when the prescribed burn is burning, people will sit together and they'll meditate and they'll kind of go through the senses and experience the fire. And for many of people, actually, it's the first time that they're experiencing fire again after a devastating fire, of 2018, and, um, yeah, it's kind of this way for people to connect to each other, to connect to themselves and reprocess some of the things that happened to them, connect with their community, and connect back with nature. Um, it's been really impactful, and yeah, and I can probably think of a there's I can probably think of a lot more other examples. Kern River Valley has done a lot of really great third space programming as well. They have a lot of programming at their arts center, with their co-working spaces. I think one most recently during the November food insecurity crisis, many of them actually came together to create a Kernville Little Free Pantry, where they put out the call to neighbors. And I think within days they had cabinets, they had baby food, organic food, pet food. Somebody brought in a fridge, and I think to this day it's been continuing. And neighbors have really stepped up to help each other.
What's beautiful to me is just how specific to the setting, like the
Mhm.
stuff in Kern County. Is that Paradise County? I remember hearing about Paradise, but where is that?
Town of Paradise in Butte County. It's like
Oh,
up
it's in
north.
Butte County. Okay.
Yes.
Just for I know folks listening will have no idea where that is unless I
Yes.
specify. Um,
Yes, sorry. The
but
context is Paradise burned in 2018, during
yeah,
the campfire. Most of actually not just Paradise, but some of the surrounding areas that we're also covering, Magalia, Butte Creek Canyon, etcetera. And, yeah, they're still rebuilding and, recovering from that.
gorgeous area. If you've never heard of it, gorgeous area. But yeah, the fire sitting down and kind of reflecting it's just so specific to what happened there. I just think that's super beautiful to how specific and like how much you can cater your programming to a location and a demographic to really make sure that it hits home. So I really love that. Um and so my next question was about how folks without resources can kind of jump on stuff like this. But I think I want to kind of change that because it sounds like there are a ton of resources. You named like 10 studies just off the dome, which is impressive. And so I know the website you mentioned, meet6neighbors.com or whatever. I'll clarify that with you so I can add that to the show notes for people who want to look into that further. So we will be providing some resources to you all for us collectively to like use and peruse. And so any other like quick little resources you can think of? If not, again, you can just email me this after and I can add them. But yeah,
Yeah.
just while we're on the topic.
Yes, off the top of my head, I think Vanessa has some really great resources over at Block Party USA for templates on how to run your own block party. Um, if you're really interested in like kind of the data and the research of your own community, the Weave project from the Aspen Institute has a map of social trust index so that you can actually go down to your own neighborhood and see what the social trust research looks like there. Um, Sam Pressler has a really great connective tissue Substack newsletter, which also if you're really into policy, he has a great policy framework for local governments and other governments to be able to take a look at. As do I think the WHO has a coalition on social connection, and the former Surgeon General as advisory, as you mentioned, as well as the Othering and Belonging Institute. So lots of different things, and I also
Love the Othering and Belonging Institute.
right. Actually just ran into John A. Powell, No King's March.
Oh, nice. Nice. I need to add an Othering and Belonging Institute link here, which I've talked about them before,
Mhm.
but I need to add that. But
They're
no, I
incredible.
love that.
Yeah,
That's
and
lovely.
plugging our own resources, meet6neighbors.com. I also forgot the fourth note to do is if you are feeling shy or, you guys have different schedules, just leaving a kind note and a little treat. Or just the kind note, we have a couple of postcard templates in the Meet Six Neighbors, that you can print and stick to your neighbor's wall. Um, yeah, lots of different little ways to just say hi.
It really takes vulnerability to do some of that stuff. Like, even
Definitely.
if you have the time and the desire, the vulnerability aspect is so interesting because, like, you really have to be willing to be maybe embarrassed, maybe rejected, maybe ignored. Um, and so just wanting to kind of speak to that out loud because that can be hard. That can be hard in general, let alone with someone you don't know that you don't even have a relationship with.
And who
Because
lives
what,
near you, so you might have to see them again.
yeah, exactly. Like, just like, oh, that was me. Hey, hi. But
Yeah. No,
but I like it because that's what it's about. It's like, well, if you want to be connected, yes, there is a little bit of like kind of that social risk and that personal risk to this, but a lot of reward as well.
yeah.
Um,
I wanna speak to that a little bit too in
yeah, yeah.
personal experience because I also moved here a couple years ago and also started this job, and so I was like, I can't just talk the talk, I also have to walk the walk. And so I think before I started, at doing neighbor to neighbor, I felt like I knew maybe a handful of neighbors, and the way my husband would share about it is he said before we had met our neighbors, he felt like he would look at our neighborhood like a plant or a rock, like it's like furniture, like where our apartment kind of sits on the way you would sit on a couch, right? And as we started to do this work, we started to like get to know our neighbors a little bit. You start to see the signs of their lives. You see the cactus that Ron dresses up every year for Christmas, the fruit bushes that, with all the delicious treats that Doris plants in her front yard, the worn out path that Daniel walks every day on the grass, which is why there's that path there. It kind of turns from a piece of furniture to an ecosystem full of people living, and it really, I think he often tells me, it changed the way he looked at neighborhoods. Um, One of the things we started doing, I was trying to figure out the most low doing a lot of work during the daytime, trying to find the most low effort way to meet our neighbors. And so there's a local restaurant that has a patio a couple streets down from me. And so we just put out an invite. Every last Tuesday, we're going to be on the patio. People can join. Sometimes I'll post it on our neighborhood Facebook wall or next door. I actually have not, I've printed sometimes, but I have not put them up yet. I think one of my neighbors actually, she hand draws a sign each time and puts it downstairs in our lobby. And so sometimes there's 5 people that come and sometimes there's 50. And over the course of the time that we've gotten to know each other, it's been really interesting. We've met people from different generations, from different professions. I met a monk the other day, and also someone who helps to write the LSAT. And I think on our 5th or 6th meeting together, our local theater started doing all gender bathrooms. And one neighbor started complaining about it, like, I don't want these all gender bathrooms. And I froze a little bit, but people started to have a conversation. And I think the first thing I thought was, if this had happened online, it would probably end in a little screaming match or people would write each other off. But actually people sat there and they talked it out and I don't know if anybody's minds were completely changed that day, but I heard the words like, I've never thought about it that way, or I could see your perspective. And people came back the next and have continued to come back to the neighborhood social. And so I think it's been really interesting to kind of see that, I think, very local, very moment in the time of this kind of national polarization and crisis. Um, yeah.
I love that. That's it's so beautiful. It was so like you told it in a way where I could just visualize it so beautifully. So thank you for that. But yeah, I just think the face-to-face conversation piece is so important because you're right. Online vitriol, like just hatred, evil. No matter what comment section you're in, they're all um, so yeah, that face-to-face, that's completely invaluable. And yeah, we've named a lot of groups, we've named a lot of organizations, and entities that have resources or just kind of like do this work. So, I'll make sure to add that, to the, description box. And for folks who keep hearing like Alyssa's examples being based in California, these organizations that she's referring to don't necessarily just do work there, and or the toolkits that they provide can be applied nationally. So if you're in the Midwest like me, there are still resources you can connect. And actually, hearing this from you, my neighborhood just created a group, um, of like people trying to connect. And in this stage of my life, I don't have the capacity in any way to be on that. But I want to send them this episode and like send them the links and send them some stuff just to see like what resources they're really pulling from. Because what you said at the beginning of the episode, really stood out to me. A lot of these folks doing this work can feel like they're in it alone. It's a big task to take on. And if folks are not aware of all of these resources and toolkits and things that they can leverage, maybe they can be. So that's really exciting. So if that's someone like you, like maybe right now in this stage of your life isn't really the time for you to necessarily be doing that, but you have the points of contact who are, even just saying, hey, you may already have this resource. In case you don't, here you go. Maybe it can alleviate some of the burden, or just add to the excitement of what you're doing in the neighborhood. So
Yeah, no,
that's
and
exciting.
sometimes you just need someone to talk to, so always happy to be a
That too.
resource and someone to complain with and gossip with, you know?
Love,
Yeah.
love. Love the gossip. Well, Alyssa, before we kind of go here, is there anything else you'd want to add, or no pressure? Just
Yeah,
wonder.
no, I'm just really excited, to chat with you today and yeah, go out there, maybe meet your next neighborhood grandparent, you know?
Neighborhood grandparent. Oh my god,
We have a
so
couple
cute.
right now, and it's just been lovely.
I love it. I'm obsessed with that. Well,
Yeah.
cool. Well, thanks so much, Alyssa, for joining me today. Again, folks, the resources for everything she mentioned will be clickable and linkable for you to click, learn, and share. And outside of that, let's go ahead and move on. Wasn't that so delightful? Alyssa is a gem. Thank you so much for joining me today, Alyssa. Super appreciate our conversation, and not just like the knowledge of the community and neighborhood work you do, but also the resources and the encouragement to like continue. I am a non-existent neighbor to my neighbors. I want it to be different, but the energy, oh my god, there's a booger. Guys, guys. The energy, and it's a lot. So really appreciate the encouragement. And yeah, thanks again for joining. If you have any comments or questions or ideas, feel free to reach out at jadonnalive@gmail.com. And outside of that, I will catch you in 2 weeks. In the meantime, take it easy, breathe deeply, and keep doing what you do. I will catch you next time, same place, same vibe. Bye.